Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. Thank you, guys. Hey, Ben, Ayu, Javier, Heidi. What's up, guys? Welcome, everybody. Feel free to unmute yourselves and chat. Feel free to post in the chat as well. Feel free to turn on your cameras. This is more like a meeting style, so you guys are free to speak and conversate with me. There's also a Q&A section at the end. I'll leave plenty of time to ask questions. You can do questions then if you want. Yeah, welcome, guys. Let me make sure it's being recorded. It is being recorded. I think I should also have a backup plan right here. I'm going to record one of my screens. Record this microphone. Okay, I think we are good to go. 6:01. Welcome, guys. You guys can say hello in the chat or unmute yourselves. It's up to you. Where is everybody from? Let's start from that. I want to see people typing stuff from Maryland. Awesome. DMV area, right? Let's see. Share this screen here. It is action-packed day today. Let me set this up properly. Let me put my phone on do not disturb. Let's see. Welcome. I see people trickling in. Oh, somebody from India, like a whole different time zone. New Hampshire. Hello from Argentina. Awesome. Congratulations. Big day Sunday, right? Argentina versus Colombia, right? That's going to be awesome. It's a good time to be a Colombian lately. It's a lot of fun. Manchester, UK. Oh, that's awesome. All right, welcome everybody. We got a lot to cover, so we can jump right into it while we wait for others to join. I want to see how many people here are already automation engineers. Anybody or QA, not automation, automation or manual is type 1 if you are a QA, type 2 if you're thinking about becoming a QA, and type 3 is the first time you ever even heard of QA. So okay, some QA people already. Oh, most people are QA. All right, I see one that is interested in becoming one. Cool, I see some familiar faces. Hello. All right, guys. I imagine you guys can hear me okay. That's why you're responding. Okay, so a lot of QAs. So is it because you guys are manual testers and trying to learn automation? Are you just curious? Automation test engineer. Okay, so you're gonna know a lot about what I'm talking about today. That's Ben. Feel free to jump in and correct me if I say anything wrong or you know, put in your input. Okay, this is really open discussion. You guys can interrupt anytime. If it gets too much, I'll let you know to hold off. But I'm really happy if you guys just jump in and interrupt. That's not a problem. Okay. And yeah, people with experience, you guys can definitely tell me a thing or two and correct me. DevOps, that's pretty cool. DevOps is awesome. If I was in a QA, I think I would love to be a DevOps because I like the cloud stuff, especially AWS. I work with AWS and I really enjoy that. Okay, guys, welcome. Let's see. So first, let me introduce myself for those of you who are new to me and to my content. My name is Admas Kunfu. I am a senior software engineer in test, SDET. That's the other common term you guys are familiar with. I've been in engineering overall for about 15 years now, and I've been in automation for about 11 years. Actually, I need to update this slide. And I've been teaching like almost 9, 10 years. So as soon as I learned the stuff, I started teaching it slowly, just creating a self-paced video courses. And last year I started doing live bootcamp sessions and teaching people live, which is much more comprehensive and giving an actual engineering experience. My background is in mechanical engineering. I went to school for mechanical engineering back in, I graduated with my bachelor's in '08, my master's in 2012. And after I graduated with my master's, I quit my job, traveled a little bit. Then I was thinking I'm going to find a job easily because I have 4 years of experience plus a master's degree. But that was not the case. I was in the Bay Area, right by San Francisco, about 20 minutes away, 40 minutes away from San Francisco. And I heard about software testing, and I was basically trying to figure out what to do. I got more serious about software testing when I couldn't find a job in mechanical engineering, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Like literally the best thing that ever happened to me. It just changed my entire life. It changed the trajectory of my life. I'm still automation engineer. I still work. I have full-time job, and everything I teach is stuff that I actually do. And nothing is theory. It's all hands-on. Um, it's an awesome career. I really enjoy it, and I think pretty much everybody that does QA enjoys it. And I'll talk a little bit about the benefits of QA. Okay, so today's agenda. First, we're going to talk about testing. Even though it looks like a lot of people here are familiar with testing, so I'll probably just move quick. So there's only very few people that say that they have no idea what testing is. So I probably won't spend a lot of time looking at the audience. Then I'll talk about programming language. What is a language, the role and what we do. Then we look at an example of a front-end automation, and we look at examples of back-end automation. I'll explain what that is, as well as show it, actual tests. That's mainly most of you guys are here to actually see automation. So I'll do that. Then we'll talk about a little bit about CI/CD pipelines, Jenkins, particularly Jenkins. Basically, after we automate our tests, we have to actually execute it somewhere in some kind of CI/CD setting, and Jenkins is one of them, the most popular one of the oldest one. Okay. Then Q&A at the end, Q&A. But again, please interrupt and ask questions. Okay, I'll keep my eye on the chat. Maybe when I get really into it, I might miss questions on the chat, but I'll get to them. But also feel free to unmute yourselves and ask questions. You should be able to do that. Okay. All right. So what is a software testing career, right? In short, this is very high level. It is making sure software meets expectation. Like whatever the software we're using is in our lives these days, we use software like pretty much from morning to night. Everything we do is supported by software. Our cars run with software, our microwaves run with software, our TVs are pretty much all software, right? So everything we do is software. And if you're working as the person that's testing the software, that's making sure the software is working, then your job is making sure it meets expectation. That's at a high level, that's what it is. Okay. That is our main part, the main part of our job. The next part is basically we manage processes. You guys, the QAs here can tell me if I'm wrong, but a lot of us, we are part of the process of building software. So building software is called SDLC, Software Development Life Cycle. In that life cycle, it's basically a cycle. We are a major part of it, and a lot of times we control or we are basically the boss of releases, right? So when something new gets created or something gets updated, and that updates needs to be released to the public. Imagine you're working for Facebook. Facebook is getting updated all the time. New features added, old features being removed, bugs being fixed, right? So developers would work on that, we fix it. Then the code that got fixed or the whatever is changed needs to make it out to the version of Facebook that everybody, the world is using. So there's a process to that. There's a process where the code gets written, then it gets tested some more, and gets deployed or published. And QAs, we're a major part of that, and we control that a lot of times. We're the one who gives a thumbs up and thumbs down to say something is ready to be released or not. So that is part of our process. And also, we are usually the middleman between a lot of different people, a lot of different teams. Since we are the QAs, we know the program, we know different aspects of the program. We have to test it end to end. We have to test every aspect of it. So um, we know a lot. So a lot of people come to us, right? Product people talk to us, engineering talks to us. We are usually part of engineering, DevOps, release management, even the business people, even lawyers, they talk to us. So our reach is pretty wide. Again, depends on, every company is different, like the culture. In some companies, QAs can be like a low level. All they do is just test. They don't really interact with managers and the higher people. In some companies, you are part of the core engineering team and you interact with pretty much everybody. And that has been my experience. I am a core part of the engineering team, and I have access pretty much from engineering managers to directors to whoever I need to talk to. So it is a very important role. That what you have to get out of this is really, it is a very, very important role. It's a key role in a company, right? So when we're testing, when we talk about software testing, we can be talking about mobile applications. We can be talking about web applications. That's what I focus on. And we can be talking about desktop applications and a bunch of other things, right? Things that don't actually have UIs. Like we can be automating networking devices or routers and switches and things like that. Whatever there is software, it has to be tested. It has to be tested. You'll be amazed how many bugs are introduced every single day. And our job is to hunt those down. Okay. It is a lot of fun. And in addition to that, we're always trying to break things. We're always trying to see what happens if I try to break the software. Can it handle it correctly, or does it break easily? That is part of it. So later on, we can talk about other reference materials. I have previous webinar recordings. I have a mini course that is free mini course that just talks about the career itself. Basically, why is QA so cool, right? Today is all about automation. What and why automation, okay? So what and why automation is, first we have to understand what testing is. For those of you, just briefly, when you test something, you go and use it manually, right? The very common example is a login page. You go to any website, you go to my website, you go to Facebook, there's a page to log in. And if your team owns that, and if your job is to verify that the login actually works, you would go to the page, right? You open a browser, you go to the page, you click on login, or you click on my account or something like that. And then there's a form, you type into the form and you click on submit, and the page is supposed to change. You get a welcome message or something looks different. You would know if you logged in or not, right? So that is, you just tested that the login page worked. Or you can go to the login page and input the wrong password and you get a message that says wrong password. You just tested that. That is the expectation. That is the requirement for that page, is to show you a correct message, and you actually test it, right? So that is you manually testing it, and that's manual testing. That's just one simple example of a test case. Any software you use, any product you use, you can manually use it as if a user is using it, and that is manual testing. Then on the other hand, what all the steps you just did to verify something is correct or something is working, all those steps you just executed manually, then you could write some code that will simulate all of those steps. For the login example, we're going to look at live examples of that. You could write code that would open a browser, goes to a page, types into all the fields you would have typed, clicks on the things you would have clicked, and verifies that what is supposed to happen actually happened. So that is automation. All the steps that you would have done manually, you would write some code and you can do it automatically, okay? So that's what it is. And why do we want automation, and why is automation so popular? It's pretty much taken over, right? If you've been in the job market, you would notice, even for manual, they post a job that says manual tester, but when you go to interviews or when you look at the description, they're talking about, oh, you got to have a little bit of knowledge about automation, right? You got to be familiar with automation. Why is that? Because it's just really popular. Automation is really fast. There's X number of tests you can manually execute throughout the day. Some tests takes a long time. This login example is really easy. Sometimes there are tests you have to set up, you have to simulate a lot of things just to get to that test part. So manual testing takes a lot of time. automation testing takes time to write the code, to prepare it. But once you write it, you can just keep running it and running it as much as you want. And you can have hundreds of tests that we will see that will run in a matter of minutes. It will take weeks probably if you were to do it manually, right? So it is really fast. It is reliable. Once you write it, it's the same thing is going over and over again, right? Once you write the code, if you write the code properly, right, you don't make any mistakes, you get it reviewed, you do a good job of writing the code properly, that code is always going to run, so it's reliable. With manual testing, you test it one time, one day, right? The next day you are going to test the same thing, but you have a hangover, or you had a long weekend, or you're tired, or you have stress. You're not going to be as focused. So there's a good chance you make mistakes, right? It's not as reliable. Humans are not consistent, right? But automation, once you write it, it's always the same thing. So it's very reliable and repeatable. Everything I just explained says repeatable. You can, once you write it, you can just run it again and again and again for days to come, for months to come. So as long as that product exists, your automation can keep running. Okay. So that is what that is. So how do you get into automation, right? I'm not talking much about how do you get into manual. You basically just take a basic course. Manual testing, a lot of it is terminology. You have to know a lot of terms and a lot of processes. You have to know what is a release, like how do you release it, what are the stages and things like that. There's a lot of processes and terminology, and it's more artistic. You get something and you need to test it, and you have to have that artistic mind that says, oh, how do I test this? How do I break it? And you can come up with tests for anything. Like I have this AirPods in front of me, right? I can come up with test for this, right? When I plug it in, does it charge? When I open it, does it do this? Do the actual AirPods fit in? What if I open it and close it like a million times? Does it break? Does it handle it? Right? So kind of a different test. It's a stress test, but anything you can test it. And looking at this and coming up like, okay, what would a user do with this thing, and how can I test it? That is very artistic, right? Like it comes with practice. Initially, it's not as obvious, but the more you do it, it becomes natural. So one piece of advice I give you is if you are serious about testing, whatever you do, wherever you're going, always think about testing that stuff. Train your mind to test something. I have a microphone right here. I can come up with test cases. You're driving, right? You're looking at the steering wheel. Think of test cases. How would I test this thing is working, right? You are having coffee. You're looking at the cup. How do I test if this cup is working or not? How do I taste the coffee itself? So train your brain in terms of tasting. How do I break this? Why would a user do that the designer did not expect? So for manual testing, that's what it takes, right? A lot of practice, a lot of learning terminologies and things like that. For automation, it's more technical. And that's why automation engineering positions pay more also, right? It's more technical. You are a programmer. Automation engineer is a programmer. My title, as I mentioned earlier, is software engineer. At the end, they tag in test, right? Because I focus on testing, but I am a developer. All I do is write code all day long, just like the developers do. But developers write more code and more sophisticated code. That's the beauty of automation. The code is not as complicated as what developers actually write, because I have to worry about memory management and a lot of just different things. It's at a higher level compared to the code we write. We write much simpler code. Because of that, the barrier to entry is easier. You don't have to be an expert at coding to actually learn automation and to land a job in automation. Like basic coding is good enough. If you go into full stack, the amount of coding you need to know is a little bit more, maybe a lot more than automation engineer. But then QA or automation is a really good gateway, right? It's easier to get in. Then the growth is pretty much unlimited. Whatever you like, you can just get into. I really strongly believe in that. Okay, so the minimum requirement to be an automation engineer, the first thing, you need a programming language. You have to you got to know a language, right? You're writing code, and code is a language. There's tons of languages, and you have to know language. That's the number one minimum requirement to be an automation engineer. So Python, Java, and JavaScript, those are three different types of code languages, three different languages, and they are very popular in our industry. I would say Java is the number one, Python is the number 2, JavaScript is the number 3. And JavaScript is really growing like super fast. Python and Java might be a little bit more popular, but they're neck to neck in this industry. Overall, Python is just growing like crazy. Python is just taking off. Okay, Java has been around a long time. They serve different purposes, but in our world, they both are really popular. So the first thing you gotta learn is a programming language. Okay, so even in my trainings, we start with that. We start with Python. Everything I do right now is Python based. So we start with the language, then we go to the tools. The next thing is you need some kind of testing tool, right? You learn the language, then with the language, you're going to use some testing tool. Selenium, right? If you've been in this industry for a little bit, you've heard of Selenium. If you've been searching for a job, you know Selenium shows up like on every job. Selenium is one of the most popular web testing tool. It's designed for websites. That's what I focus on, testing websites, web applications. Like Facebook is a web app. SuperSQA.com is a web app. Amazon.com is a web app. They all have mobile versions of them, but I focus on testing the web version of them. So Selenium is a must-know for anybody getting started. Then Playwright is another one, just like Selenium. It's a front-end tool. It's fairly new relative to Selenium. I think it came out, I don't want to say when it came out, but Selenium has been around for a while. Playwright is quite new, relatively new, but is growing really fast. So once you learn Selenium to make yourself more marketable, right, more desirable in the market, or expand the market you can address, you can add Playwright into your resume. And then, of course, you almost, well, I would say double, but you expand the reach, right? Then you want to do some kind of load testing tool. I advise that. There is something here, backend testing. We're going to talk about backend testing. But for a backend testing, for API testing, usually you just, the language is good enough. You just learn one of the languages and a framework, and you're good to go. But load testing is a whole different discipline. The video is recorded, the session is being recorded, so I'll share the recording, guys. Somebody just request to record it. So load testing tools, there are several tools. That's another thing that you can learn. You can get a job as a load tester or performance tester. Another skill on top of, so we talk about the programming language, the tools, and another one, this could have been in the programming language, but its own thing, SQL. The L is actually for language, a structured query language. This is a language we use to read and write data from a database. This is the database language. You can make an entire career out of it, by the way, just SQL itself. You can go dive deep into it, be an expert in SQL, learn some SQL specific tools, and you can actually have a career, data analytics or something like that, okay? So those are what I consider minimum, right? Those are my opinion, but also it's a fact. But the dots are the minimum, okay? Inside of the dots, those are options. I'm not saying you have to learn Python, you have to learn Java, you have to learn JavaScript. One of those, okay? Then to be more competitive, in addition to the languages, you got to learn more tools. CI/CD tools like Jenkins. Jenkins especially, it's been around for a long time, it's really popular, so it shows up a lot in the job market. So having Jenkins on your resume would allow you to go past the first filters, right? They scan resumes with AI and with computers. So to go through that scan, to go through that first round, having keywords like this is extremely important. So things like Jenkins or GitLab, those are CI/CD tools, right? A bunch of other ones, CI Circle, GitHub Actions. There's a bunch of other ones. Those are popular, and I use them, so I put them here. I'm very comfortable with those too. Then Docker, right? Then the cloud. There's different aspects of the cloud. Those are things that you will learn once you got the minimum. Then you just you keep leveling up, right? You learn something, now you're more desirable. You learn something, yeah, you're more desirable, and you can target more jobs. So there's no end to this. This is just a very, very small piece of what you could be learning. There's no end to what you can learn in tech, and that's the beauty of it. It's just fun. It never gets old. It never gets boring. It's quite awesome in that regard. Okay. All right. So before we look at actual tests, let's just quickly talk about infrastructure, how stuff works. Actually, I can talk about this when we come to the back end, but just so you can understand how websites and apps and stuff work, there's always a front end and a back end, right? A front end is stuff that you see in the browser, stuff you see on a mobile app, any kind of screen, any screen, that is a front end. you get to interact with it, right? A lot of times it's called GUI, graphical user interface, or just UI. If you just say UI, user interface. Usually we talk when somebody says UI, even though it's just user interface, it can be a backend also, but usually it means GUI, graphical user interface. Right? What we're seeing here on your screen, or the Zoom, or the browser, all of that is a UI. Okay. Then there's a backend where all the thinking is happening, all the logic is happening. That is somewhere on a server. So when you go to supersqa.com, right, we all see the same thing. Everybody here, if you go to supersqa.com, you all see the same thing. What your browser is doing is it's sending a request to a server. So we get a request saying, hey, give me supersqa.com. There's something in the middle that figures out the IP address of supersqa. There's a DNS that basically figures out each machine has an address, so what address to go to. But at a high level, the browser says, hey, give me supersqa.com. The server says, oh, you want supersqa.com? Okay, here it is. It will send a response. In this case, it will be an HTML. In the body, there will be an HTML. And the browser knows how to make the HTML look pretty, and it will show to you. Then you click on login. Again, it's going to make a request to the server saying, hey, give me the login page. The server responds. You put in username and password. You click on submit. The browser is going to send a request to the server saying, hey, this guy is trying to log in. This is the username. This is the password. The server is going to think. It's going to do all the thinking. It's going to do all the logic. It's going to figure out if this is a valid username and password. And if it is, it's going to respond saying, okay, here is a logged in page. The user is good. If the password is wrong, it's going to respond saying, hey, the password is wrong. Show him this instead. Show him this error instead. So it's always request, response, request, response, request, response. That's how everything works. The mobile app, the same thing. A lot of it runs on the phone itself, but at the same time, a lot of it also runs on the server. So when you think about Facebook.com, all those posts, all these pictures, all these videos, they're not on your phone, right? They're on a server somewhere. The app is making a request. Every time you scroll, it's making a request. A request, response. So our testers, we have to test that whole thing. We are responsible for all that, the whole thing. Well, it depends on your team, right? For many years of my career, my first several years of my career, my team, the engineering team I work with, we only built backend stuff. We never maintained front end, so I was just testing the backend. Then we started owning more of front end. Then I started doing both. Now I do both. I write front end and backend tests. So if your team is responsible for front end stuff, then you're doing with Selenium or Playwright, and you're testing the UI. Click this, click that, go here, fill out this form. Does this happen when whatever the user is doing? If your team is responsible for backend services, so they're building like backend services, Java services, PHP services, it doesn't matter what the service is, then you're testing this request and response, request and response. You send a request, you get a response, and you know what the response is supposed to be, depending what the request is, right? So your job is, okay, if I send a request like this, what should the response be? If I send a request like that, what should the response be? If I send a bad request, does it respond correctly? Does it give me the right kind of error? That is going to be your job as a backend tester, okay? So that's why this slide is here. So time to actually look at code. So the first thing I want to show you is some Python code. You know what? Let me put my taskbar here so you can see. So I'm using VS Code. VS Code is just a text editor where it's an IDE. It's made to edit code, but it's just a tool we use to write our code. Okay, there's a lot of options. I use VS Code and PyCharm. PyCharm is specifically for Python. VS Code is pretty much for anything. VS Code is really popular. All the YouTube videos you watch these days, they use VS Code. It's pretty awesome. There's a reason for that. So first, let me open up this guy here, so I can just show you what code is. So when we talk about code, it's always just a file with a bunch of instructions, right? So this particular file is a Python file. It's a Python code. It ends with .py. That's how you know it's a Python code, right? Without looking at the inside, just looking at the .py. If it was a Java code, it would be .java. If it was a JavaScript code, it would be .js. By the way, Java and JavaScript, they're not related at all. The only thing they have in common is they're both programming languages. That's the only thing. I don't know, somebody decided to name what, I think Java came first probably. Actually, I don't know. but the name sounds like they're related, but they're not even close. Okay, so a file, one script has a bunch of instructions for the computer to do specific thing. This is another file, it has a bunch of instructions to do specific thing. This is another one that has a bunch of instructions to do specific thing. Each one could do something on its own, or it might be part of an overall process, right? They all might work together. In this particular example, each one of them are individual. For example, this one is a Selenium script, Selenium Python. You can see a lot of import Seleniums. It's a Python script that uses Selenium. So it basically, it's a test that verifies a free coupon works. Okay, this whole thing, when you execute it, it's a test. It's actually a test to verify a coupon works. This one is a test to verify that if you try to log in with an invalid user, you would get the correct error. This one is a test that verifies a new user can register. It's a registration. I'll execute one or two of them in a minute, okay? But usually with testing, you don't have individual files. You have a framework, so you can just execute everything at once. The way this is, you can't execute all three of them at once. You have to write some complicated logic to be able to write all of them. But there are tools, there are frameworks that would allow you to say, hey, run everything that's front end, run everything that's back end, run everything that is regression, or run everything that is smoke, or run everything for the homepage, or run all the tests for my account, or run everything that is for the cart page. There's a framework. I'll show you a framework, but it's not really going to make a lot of sense to you. So this is, as I say, is Python code. So when you learn Python, when you take a Python course, what you learn is how to write this stuff, right? Well, of course, how to run it. There's always two aspects of programming, right? Being able to execute the code and being able to write the code. Initially, you should be able to execute the code because somebody already wrote it, the code exists, you need to run it, and then being able to actually write your own code and create stuff. As a manual tester, a lot of times, the company you work for usually would have automation. And that's why, even though the position is manual, they want you to have some automation experience so that you can actually execute the existing tests, right? Even though you don't write the tests, but you might run the tests. The automation engineers wrote tests. The team already has tests, but you're responsible for quality, even though you're a manual tester. But they still want you to be able to run the test, look at reports. When the test runs at the end, it will generate a report. You look at the report and you can identify, which test is failing. So that is phase one, being able to actually execute. Then phase two will be being able to write. So when you're taking a course, the first thing you learn is basically writing, executing code, then writing code. So each one of those, you'll just learn. Right now, if you've never coded before, when you see this, it looks like totally foreign language. Guess what? It is a foreign language, right? It is a Python language. If you've never done it, it's a foreign language. Then you're going to learn one thing at a time. One thing at a time. Hey, what does it mean when we have something equals something? You're going to learn it. What does it mean when you have something dot something? You're going to learn it. That is part of learning Python. Okay. So let's execute this just for fun so you can see it. We're just going to execute this one. Like say, actually, I didn't even execute this today. Let's see what happens. I am going to be in here, cd Python scripts. I'm going to do Python 3. That's a command. Verify free coupon works. I'm going to hit enter. We should see a browser open up. Keep an eye out here. There you go. It's running Firefox. It opened it in my other monitor. The test is running. It went to the cart page. It applied the coupon. It got a successful message, and it probably paused. Well, it didn't pause actually. It's waiting for something to happen. It's going to fail. Let's see. Timeout exception. I think this one is supposed to. It basically failed. I don't care at this point why it failed. I am surprised. But you just saw that, right? It opened the browser. Let's look at the code real quick to see what it does. So the first thing it does is open a Firefox. Okay. Then it's going to go to this site, right? Driver get, it says go. It's going to add item to the cart. I put a sleep here, so it's too fast. If I don't put the sleep here, it's going too fast. What is the sleep? Right now, it's sleeping 0. Actually, didn't even sleep. I can put in, let's put a 2-second sleep, so it would run a lot slower. It's going to add item to the cart. It's going to click on the cart and goes to the cart page. is going to type into the coupon field and it's going to verify the total is 0. Okay. For some reason, I don't see anything wrong, but it actually failed. I can change it. Instead of Firefox, let's do Chrome. Okay. Now I'm going to just hit the up arrow, execute it. It's probably going to open. There you go. So it's a little bit slower this time because every step is waiting 2 seconds. You can see the coupon being typed. You can see this being clicked. There you go. Okay. So the total is 0. So the test should have passed, but there is something that is making it not pass. And that's the thing with front end. Front end is so unstable. Well, it's kind of good for us because somebody got to maintain it. That means there are jobs, right? That's why we have jobs, because you always have to maintain it. There stuff always goes wrong. Backend is my favorite. Backend is so smooth and it's so much. It's just nicer. And with the experience, I'm sure you will agree with me. Okay, so that is a test. Let's do another one real quick for registration. And what this guy does, this guy would open Chrome. It will go to the same site. It will actually go straight to my account. Then it's going to find the email field and type in some random email. It generates a random email. See, this line here is random, is generating a random string, creating an email. Is going to type into it and is going to type in a password and it's going to click on the register button and it is going to verify. So I'm going to do Python 3, verify new user registration. Hit enter. See the browser open, my hands are free. It's going to go to the site, it's going to type in the email, wait 2 seconds, type in the password, it's going to click on register, and it's going to done. It's going to say print. Once the logout button displayed, if the logout button displays, that means it's logged in, right? If you're not logged in, you don't see a logged out button. So what this guy is doing is, this is Selenium right here, find element, is saying, hey, give me that button that says logged out, log out. Then it's saying, it's doing, hey, is it displayed? If it's displayed, print pass and be done with it. Okay, so that is an example of a front-end test. So these are individual files. I can show you a framework. So this is a framework that we built in my bootcamp. I have a live bootcamp, which I'll talk about later on with your permission. It's a framework with about 200 tests right now. So now what you see here is a lot of different files that work together. The main thing, the core, is in here. Under SSQA test, we go to tests. Inside of tests, I have 2 folders, backend and frontend. So there's a bunch of front-end tests, a bunch of back-end tests. So if we look at the front-end, there are tests for the cart page, right? There's a test for that just checks headers, that checks coupons, a lot of different things. If we look at this, there's several tests in here. They're all related to coupons, right? Valid coupon, invalid coupon, 25% off coupon, 50% off coupon, empty coupon, things like that. There are tests to display, make sure items are displayed. Make sure product image is displayed in the cart page. Then we go to components, like different components, the footer, the search, the banner. Then end-to-end. A lot of end-to-end is very common. You always have to do end-to-end. So if we look at this end-to-end test, end-to-end means it's basically from the beginning to the end of one flow. In this case, end-to-end checkout as a guest user. So on that website, so I have a test site. I can go to one of them. They have different versions. Demo store.spreadsheet.com. So this is an e-commerce site that I use for everything to test it. I have videos on how to create this. It's very easy to create this on your local machine. And there's an advantage in creating your own. You can use this for front end, but I cannot give you backend access because this is my site. And if I give backend access, somebody can just destroy it. But if you create your own, you have full access to the backend. You have access to the database and you have access to APIs. It's a fully production-ready APIs that you can practice testing on. So you should definitely, everybody that is a QA definitely should build a website like this. It's very easy. It is built with WordPress, and I have YouTube videos. If you want the links, I can send them the links directly, or you can just search my YouTube channel. It's an awesome site to practice on. Okay, so that's what this end-to-end test does. Is it goes to this site. There's a different version of this, but it's the same thing. It comes here, it adds item to the cart, and it goes through the entire checkout flow. To check out, since this is a test site, we cannot process credit cards. It will apply a free coupon that makes the entire cart free, so you can go out and test the entire checkout flow. So that's what normally a framework looks like. A bunch of tests, right? There's end-to-end, there's homepage test, there is a product details page. Then we look at the backend. So in backend, I mean, in this particular case, all APIs in the database. We make an API call, we're expecting something to happen. For example, let's look at this customer's API, right? We're going to make, this is customer API smoke. We're going to make an API call to create a customer. We make API call to the server. Then what do we do? Once to verify the customer is created, we go to the database. DAO stands for database access object, database access object. We have SQL in there. Select start from. Hopefully you guys, especially the QAs, hopefully have some basic understanding of SQL. We have SQL in there. So we make an API call to create a user. How do we verify that API actually works? There are several things. An API always responds something. In this case, it actually responds with the user information that was created. But do we just trust that, or do we do additional validation, right? I like to do additional validation. I'll go in the database and I make sure that user actually got created. I made the API call. The API said, yes, I created it, but then did it actually get created? So we're going to talk about backend, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So this is a framework, and there's a lot of things in here that just work together, makes our lives really easy. So if right now, if I wanted to run this, if I want to run the whole thing, I can just say run everything. I can say run everything that's in the backend folder. I can say run everything that's in the front end folder, or I can specifically say run this test. So right now, let me run this end-to-end test, right? This end-to-end test, I have two IDs. I can choose any of these IDs. So let's say I want to run this ID, test case ID 33. I'm just going to come here. I got to do some prep work. I have to set some environment variables like passwords and things like that. I already did that, so I could just run the test. So I'm going to do Python 3-m PyTest. PyTest is the main framework. So I took PyTest, very popular framework, and built a wrapper around it. So I can have my own helpers. When I want to make an API call, I have a class to make API calls. When I want to connect to a database, I have a class to connect to a database. I don't have to rewrite code all the time. I write it once and I use it for every test. So I built a framework around PyTest. PyTest is really, really popular. You definitely want the word PyTest on your resume if you know PyTest. Then I'm going to do -m for marker. These two M's are completely different. They mean different things. Then I'm going to say TCID 33. I just say run TCID 33. I'm going to add one more thing. I'm going to say HTML so I can generate a report. There's different kinds of reports. This is one of the basic reports. I'm going to say report.html. There you go. I hit enter. It's running that end-to-end test, and I expect it to fail. It was failing earlier. There you go. It's waiting for something to happen here, and it's not happening, so it is going to fail. I'm just going to wait for it to fail. There you go. So it says one failed, and I can open the report that was generated. This is the report. Usually it's easier to see the issue on the report. So when the report gets generated, it shows me what the code is. It shows me what the error is. I only run one test, so the report only shows one test. But the beauty, it also attaches a screenshot of what did the page look like when the test failed, okay? That is very, very useful. Why? Because you normally don't run tests on your local machine. Normally you run tests on some kind of remote machine, right? In Jenkins, in GitLab, some kind of CI/CD. You have hundreds of tests, and you're not going to run hundreds of tests on your laptop. You're going to run it somewhere. So you wake up in the morning, you go to work. The first thing you do is, hey, what happened during the test last night? Okay, I had 1,000 tests. How many of them passed? How many of them failed? Then when something failed, you're going to have to run it locally to see what failed. But if you have a screenshot, you know exactly what did the page look like when the test failed. So if you're using a good framework, it should have a screenshot. So in this case, why did it say timeout? So it's waiting for some element, and that element did not exist. So we would need to look more into it. So it's looking for the billing information. It's looking for the billing information, but the page never made it that far, right? We're still in the cart page. So then I would have to investigate, is there something wrong with the checkout button, or is there something wrong with my test? It's one of the two. Either the test it's not doing proper things, or the actual app is having issues. Okay, so that is an example of a front end, and back end is similar except there is no UI. So a backend is basically you make an API request and you get a response. So I wasn't planning to show workspace. Let me see, switch to workspace. This is called Postman. Postman is a very popular tool for APIs. And APIs are basically URLs that it's an address. First, you have the address of the website. Then you have an endpoint, very specific thing that you want to do with that website. And you make a request, you get a response. You make a request, you get a response. So I want to look at a few examples. So for example, if I want to look at this products API, and I'm going to do this create product. If you do decide to practice on your own and you build your own website, site like this, this uses WordPress and WooCommerce. So WooCommerce API, let me just WooCommerce. Let's see. There you go. There's this documentation. It's open. It's available to everybody. And there's tons of APIs you can practice with. Tons of APIs, right? Order API, order notes, refunds, products. All of those are different APIs. And there's examples of how to use it. So like, for example, list customers, right? If you want to make an API call to list all the customers, there's an example. Python, different languages, curl. Curl is something you just do on the command line. Anyways, there's the documentation. I just want to show you that. So let's say I want to create this product. I'm going to say new hat. That's the name of the product. It's $25. This is the URL is I have it set up so I can use it for different things. I'm using a variable, but it's sending it to this site here. If I hit send, okay, it just created this product. If I go to my website now, if you remember the website, is doing it to, why is it not showing me? Demo store. So if I go to demo store, if I search, if I search for that product, there is that product. Okay. What ID is the product? The product I got created 730. I can update it. I can make an API, another API, an update API. I'm going to use the same ID. I want to use the same URL. This is the website. This is my local, but I want to do it on the remote. Let's say I want to update the price. I'm going to say regular price is, let's say it's $100. I'm just going to give it a try. Hopefully it works. 404. Something did not work. 404. Probably because of credentials. Oh, I don't know actually. Anyways, this is an API call. You make a request, you get a response. So our job is, in this case, for example, if the system, I tried to update the product and I got a response, but the response is 404. So the response has its quotes. Anything that starts with 200 is good. Anything that starts with 300 depends. It means it's redirected. Anything that's with 400 is bad. Anything with 500 is really bad, right? The server is like down. 400 is like, in this case, the server is not down, but maybe this URL is wrong. Oh, this is the problem here. Let me see. Let me make the call. Well, 400, right? Regular price is not type of string. So give me the error. So this can be a text. This can be a good text right now. So in this API, if I pass an integer instead of a string, would it work? Right now I passed an integer. So when you put quotes around it, it becomes a string, not an integer. To you and I, to humans, when we look at this, this is 100. With the quote, without the quote, it's still 100. But the system is different. It complained saying regular price is not type string. That means I was sending an integer, but it wants a string. So I just changed it to a string. Let me send that. There you go. I got a 200 back. Status code. The response is 200. That means it worked. In addition to the status code, there is a payload. So if you're testing it, you will test that. If I put an integer 100, do I get a 400 back? Check. In the response, this is a response body, does it give me the correct message? Check, right? Then when I put a string, do I get a 200? A test case. Oh, okay, I get a 200, but in the response, is the name correct? Is the select correct? Is the permalink correct? Is this correct? That's correct, right? Those are the type of things you would test when you're doing API testing. You make a response, you make a request, you get a response. Then you play with the request with those two. Well, you can only play with the request. In the request, you do different things. What if I don't pass this in? What if I do this? What would the response look like? What if I do that? What if the response look like? Because everything we see here is engineered. When they designed the API, they designed it so that when you make some kind of request, you get some kind of response. And your job is that actually happen. In addition to that, I just created the product, right? I would go in the database, use SQL. That's why SQL comes in the picture for us for QAs. I use SQL to go in the database and did this product get created? Obviously, it got created because we can see it in the UI. Okay. So I just updated it. So when I refresh this, the price should change to 100, assuming I updated the right field because there's too many price fields. It did, right? I made an API call to update the price, and that update reflects in the UI, in the user interface, right? So normally that's not how you would verify. You would never like make an API call and then go to the front end, because front end is very expensive. Expensive meaning not money, but resource, right? It takes time for a browser to open, go to the page, everything renders. Compared to the UI, the API testing, it takes a lot more time to do front end. But normally what you would do is you would actually make the API call, then go to the database. Or you do a get call. So now we have this ID, right? We can make another API call to say get product. This is another one. I can say get this product. I would need, yeah, I think that works. I get this product, then I can check the price is actually 100. So you make a post call or a put call to update, then you make a get call to get the response and actually verify the response. The update you did is reflected in the response. So that is what API testing is. So when you talk about backend testing and front-end testing, we just saw examples of both. So what you do is you normally manually, this Postman tool is really, really popular for many reasons. The way I use it is I first manually test the API, right? Just what we did right now. This is a get call. I verified how to make the get call, or I verified how to make the post call because it has a payload and everything. This is called a payload or a data that you send with the request. The request has the URL and it also has some data you send with it. So I try it out. I see what the call looks like. I see what the response looks like. I know what to expect. Then I take this information and I automate it in Python. I do the same exact thing. I make the call in Python. This, actually, if you click on this, this would give you how to make this call in Python. Postman is pretty awesome. You can literally copy this into a Python script and you can make the exact same API call using Python. All right, so, but also you can automate a lot of things within Postman. That's another thing for your resume. I don't know how often companies use that, but you can automate tests in Postman. You can have a list. See how like this folder has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different APIs. I can write a test that says make this API call. When you get the response should look like that. And you do most of that, as far as I know, you do it in JavaScript. So if you know JavaScript, then you can learn how to automate in Postman. Guess what? Resume. That will just make your resume much better, right? You can apply for more jobs. I'm sure there's a demand for that. But it's not very scalable. And like if you have just few APIs, it would make sense. And if you don't have complicated logic, it would make sense. But for most of the time, when you test an API, you have to do a lot of setup. You have to prepare a lot of data. And then you test out the API. So it makes sense to do it in code as opposed to in Postman. All my experience has been in code and mainly in Python. So when we go back to our framework, in our framework here, and under the backend, so we go to test, backend, all of those are tests. So I can say, run this create customer smoke. I can just get the ID. I can take this ID. I can repeat the previous command if I want, previous command, and I just change the ID, and this will run that test. Okay, bad status code. I expected 200, got 401, and we look at the error. It's authentication error. That means I'm not using the right credentials. When you run backend tests, you need credentials. That's why you cannot run backend test on my site. That's why you have to create your own site, because you don't have access to the back end. Front end, you can do all the front end stuff, no problem. Back end, you need credentials. So when I set up the credentials, I didn't set it up correctly. So it's failing, which is fine. I can try it real quick. I can do source credentials. Let me see which one. Local bootstrap. I think this is supposed to be that one. Demo store. Let me run the test again because backend is so fast. Yeah, I have the wrong credentials. Another thing I can do is I can say run everything. If I don't give it the ID and I can just give it the folder, I can say run everything that's in tests and backend. Now this is going to run about 100 tests. Everything's going to fail because every single API expects credentials. Everything will fail, but I'll just show you the report. And I'm generating exact same report. Everything is going to fail. It's going to be quick. Let's see how many is going to be. It's about halfway done. So this is what API testing is. So when you become a QA automation engineer, usually they want you to have both experience, both front end and back end, because one team might own both and they want you to contribute as much as possible. You might be able to get a job just as a front end or just as a back end, but I definitely encourage you to learn both. And in all my programs, I teach both. We cover both. So there were 81 plus 22, so 103 tests, and they all failed. So this is like it took 30 seconds for 100 tests. If he was passing, it would take a little bit longer. So when you look at the report, where is the report? Right here, if I refresh, everything failed. Let's see, how do I collapse this? Show details, hide all details. Everything is here. There's no screenshot because it's a backend test, but you will go and look at each one to see why it failed. So normally our job is in the morning, we go and we look at the report of the test that ran overnight. We get something like this. I mean, hopefully everything doesn't. If everything failed, then it's not your automation, right? Something is wrong. Like the server is down or the website is down. But usually you would have like 10% fail or 5% fail. Then you would come here and you just handpick the failed ones and you investigate why did it fail. Is a problem my code or is there a real issue? If there is a real issue, then you report it to the developers. There's a whole process. Usually you use JIRA or you use Bugzilla or something like that, some kind of tool that's made for this. Okay. Right. So that is front end. Now we write a test. Again, what I say here is what I showed you here is our framework. It's a framework with a collection of tests, 200 tests total. If I run this and I just give it the folder test and I'm going to pass in collection only, this would just find tests, but does not run it. Let's see, actually. Is it collection only? I thought it was collection only. Maybe it's collect only. The tests folder. Okay. Collect only. There you go. So there are 200 tests. When you pass in the special flag collect only, this is very specific to PyTest. It will just go find tests. It won't execute them. So it's basically telling me, hey, I found 208 tests in here. So this is a framework. We have 200 tests in there. If I was to run all the tests, my laptop would be unusable because the browser for the front end, half of this is front end. The browser will keep opening. Browser will open and I can't do no work. I have to sit here and wait for it. 200 is very little. If you're working for a company, 200 is a very small number of tests. I guess it all depends, but like on my job, I have about 400 or so, maybe 300. It depends on the season, front end, and the same amount for back end. So like sometimes we have 600-700 tests running, and that might take 30 minutes each. 30 minutes for a front end, 30 minutes for the back end. Especially front end is very long. It takes a long time. You can't just sit there and wait for it, right? It's not, that's not very realistic. So what happens is, and that's not useful. What happens is your code is going to run somewhere in some kind of pipeline. That's when Jenkins comes in the picture. So you guys can learn Jenkins, especially the QAs that are already testing. Without learning how to code, you can learn Jenkins. I do advise you to just watch YouTube tutorials if you want on Jenkins and put it on your resume. Learn how to use Jenkins. Because even as a manual tester, like let's say you join my company right now as a manual tester, I have tons of automation. I already have Jenkins and it's all set up. I'm going to expect you to execute it. I'm going to expect you to go look at results, look at reports, right? I'm not going to expect you to set up Jenkins. I'm not going to expect you to create Jenkins jobs. I'm not going to expect you to write automation because I hired you as a manual tester. But I definitely expect you to go and look at Jenkins and tell me if there is something broken, or look at a test in Jenkins, look at the report and analyze it. And Jenkins is not just for test, right? Mainly it's a pipeline for to deploy code. Okay. So I definitely advise you, no matter what stage of your career you're at, Jenkins is something all you gotta do is like invest 2 weeks of learning and it will be on your resume and bam, right? Up, you level up. So this is what Jenkins looks like. Each one of those are jobs. They basically configured to do a specific thing. Each one, those are called jobs. And you can group jobs into views. These ones are views. So if I click on this is one view that has a list of jobs. Okay. Any moment now, it automatically logged me out. So when I click on this, you can see there's a group of jobs. I'll come back to this one. When I click on this, there's a group of jobs, logically grouped. So this one says Frontiers, PyTest, Ecom. Okay, so 3 tests that are related to the Frontiers. Frontiers is just a group name. One I name every bootcamp groups something. So this was Frontiers. Interview app. This is one pipeline related to all that particular application, and so on. In addition to views, you can also group them into folders. Each job, as you can see, there is jobs here. There are folders here. Inside of this folder, there are many jobs, as many as you want. And that's just a way for you to group it. But each job has a logical function. It does something. It's configured to do something. A job is like a terminal. If you notice, everything I do is in this terminal. This here is a terminal, same as opening this guy here. If I open this is a terminal, right? If you're on Windows, you have CMD or you have PowerShell, or you have Git Bash. You have some kind of window like this when you run commands, right? That's how you talk to computers. If you're uncomfortable with terminal, that's another thing. You should definitely get comfortable. I'm actually building a small free course, just a tutorial about terminal. I also have a YouTube video, a small one, just to build your confidence to know that terminal is not. I know when we see terminal, we think hackers, we think some sophisticated thing, but it's not. We're just telling the computer what to do, and the computer will send you a message right back, right? I can say echo hello. I just told it to just hell. I just put hell instead of hello, but I just told it, hey, print it, right? That's all I told it. So you give it commands and you will respond with something. That's what the terminal is. So each one of those jobs, they have a terminal, like a terminal inside. That's the wrong word, but you can put instructions on what it should do. So, and you create pipelines. So I'll show you one pipeline here. For some reason, it's taking its time. Let me show you this site. So we have this site. Look at the URL, dev.bootcamp.store.spreadsql.com. This is my dev site. Another one, staging.bootcamp.store. It looks exactly the same, almost exactly the same. Then there is bootcamp.store.com. So every company, guys, have different environments. For every website, there are different versions of that website. There are versions that are production. You guys have heard of the word prod, right? Prod stands for production. It means it's open to the public. That is the actual final product that your customers are using. But when you change code, when you make code change, you don't just put it to production. You have to test it first, right? And to test it, you don't test it on your local machine. There are 100 developers making changes. All the changes that all the developers make, you will need to go into some environment that the public cannot access. So this is my way of simulating that, which is with those publicly accessed, those 3 websites are running literally in different servers. Okay. And so normally what companies will do is this site here is running on the server, right? They'll block access to the public, and you can only access this behind a VPN. You have to be behind the VPN, or you have to be in your company's network, right? You have to be in the office, use the network, then you can access it. And there's all kinds of ways to do that. So what happens is the code gets built, somebody writes it, somebody writes a code, and it gets deployed to this dev environment. Once it makes it to this environment, the public cannot access it, only employees can access it. Then this is where we do our testing. So companies can call this QA environment. This is very typical to call it QA environment, test environment, staging environment, development environment, or you might have multiple environments. In my experience, I have multiple environments before we get to stage. There is a development environment, then testing environment, then there's some other environment, then some other environment, then there is production environment, right? Every environment, it gets cleaner. Dev environment is super corrupted. Everything is broken because the developers are changing. Like there's hundreds of developers making changes. Of course, they're going to introduce buggy code, right? So the dev environment, you don't usually do testing. Then once everything like it's a little bit stable, you put it to test environment. Test environment is much more stable. You run your test. Whether you're doing manual testing or you're doing automation, you do it in that environment, in that test environment, okay? Or QA environment. QA environment is actually typical and it's easier to understand. So there is a process for the code. The developer writes it. There's a process that will take that code and puts it into this environment. Then it takes it and puts it into another environment. So that's called a pipeline. And that's called CI/CD, right? Well, that's called a pipeline. Then what makes it CI/CD is when everything just happens automatically. So when we look at this view here, this is demo store site, and it is a pipeline, okay? This is one view. There's different ways to look at it. So the first job, what this does is checking if there is, it's called polling, is polling the Git repository. Git is like GitHub, it can be Bitbucket, GitLab, or anywhere. I use Git where we keep our code. A repository is a place to store your code. So what this job does is, this is a typical pipeline, is polling the repository to see if there are any new code, if anything changed, right? You can configure it to check every minute, every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, whatever. So it's checking all the time. As soon as this job notices there is a change, it's going to be like, oh, there's a change. Let me trigger this job. So this job internally say, hey, it will trigger this job. And this job is like, okay, it will wake up and it will do some stuff. What this is supposed to do is, it's supposed to take the new code and deploy it into that particular environment. In this one, it says deploy to dev environment. So this guy is going to deploy it to the dev environment. So it's going to deploy it here. If we had time, I would have showed you. I would have made code change, and you can just, as soon as I make code change and I commit it, you will see this pipeline just trigger. This is checking every 5 minutes. Then this will trigger, it will take that new code and deploys it into this dev environment. Once it deploys it, this guy is going to trigger this guy. What does this guy do? It runs our automation. This is where the automation comes. This is where we come in the picture, right? All our work is right here. Once the code is deployed, the automation gets triggered and it will test it. We might have hundreds of our tests. All of that test runs. And if it passes, right, then this guy can trigger this guy. And what does this guy does? Deploy to stage. It will take that code and puts it into the staging environment, to another server, staging environment. You can see the URL is different. Also, if you check the IP address is different. Once the code is in staging, then you run more tests. You might run the same set of tests or regression. The way I wrote it here, first you run smoke tests, right? Just basic tests. Smoke tests are a small subset of tests that are critical. So I want to make sure the smoke is passing before I deploy to staging. Once I deploy to staging, I run regression. Regression is the whole thing, every test, right? So you run all regression, and if it passes, then you deploy it to production. So this whole thing happens automatically, well, depending on the company, but that's why CI/CD means. CI/CD means continuous integration, continuous development. As soon as a developer commits this code, basically they always test it locally. They test it on their laptop. They make sure everything is good, but then they don't have a full picture, right? Because they're testing that little thing. As soon as they check it in, this whole thing happens. It gets pulled, it gets deployed, it gets tested, deployed to another environment, get tested, then deployed to production. Continuous deployment or continuous integration. That's why CI/CD is Jenkins' CI/CD tool, and our automation comes in the picture. And that's why your automation have to be really stable, because if your automation is flaky, then you're going to block the pipeline. You can't deploy, the CI/CD is not valid. What I noticed though lately, a lot of people they would have CI/CD all the way to staging, but for production, they want a human to click on deploy. You click on this play button to execute. You basically everything happens automatically. But production is so sensitive, right? You like big companies. Think about Amazon. Think about Facebook. If production goes down for 10 seconds, they lose millions. Literally, if Amazon goes down for 10 seconds, they lose millions of dollars, right? So you don't take chances. So usually you would have a human clicking the production one, but that's not true CI/CD. True CI/CD is basically everything goes out. So you learn Jenkins because the automation you write is part of it. It comes in the pipeline. So you have to understand how pipelines work. And as a QA, again, you are the one that says which code is ready to go out, which one is tested, which one is not tested. You usually manage pipelines. You don't build these pipelines, but you manage it. You make sure something is ready to go out or not, right? You're the gatekeeper of the team or the company, right? So that is what I have. I'm looking at my agenda. That's literally what I want to cover. So we looked at, let's get back to the slides. We looked at what testing is briefly. We looked at what programming language looks like, why we need it, why we use it. We looked at front-end automation, like in detail. We looked at back-end automation in detail, and we looked at what happens after you write the test. You automate it, everything's passing or something's not failing, but you have tests. What happens to it? You have to integrate it to some kind of CI/CD tool like Jenkins or GitLab or GitHub Actions. So there are several things to do. So that is what automation is. And I hope that's why you came here. That's why you joined me today to see what automation looks like, what it is. If you were to get trained in automation, what you would be doing. Literally, that's what you would be doing at the job with a slight variation. This is high level. Most likely you do everything of this, but then there are different tools. Like I mentioned earlier, you might, instead of Selenium, the examples I showed you, the code I showed you was Python and Selenium. You might be working with Python in Playwright, or you might be just doing backend with some specialized tool, or you might be doing Java. You never know because the market, right? Depending on where you end up. But an overall, this is exactly what you need to be learning, and this is what you will be doing in the market, right? At a high level. Okay. So if you want to learn this stuff, you should join me definitely. I have a boot camp, and I also have like self-paced courses if you just want to go on your own speed. It's less content, but you can still learn. It includes Python, it includes Selenium. I can pull it up actually. We can just go to this site. It includes the key things you need. Let's just quickly take a look at that. You guys can ask questions at any time I see something posted there. So if you look at this bundle deal, it's all self-paced, but there's a Python course, a Selenium course, API testing course, SQL course. Those four are critical. These are additional frameworks. They're nice to have, but this, again, just like I explained, you have to know language, you have to know Selenium or Playwright. I chose Selenium because that's what I do. API testing is a must, and SQL. Okay, and all these three are based on Python, and SQL is its own thing. Then I have a bootcamp. The bootcamp is that's the money maker right there. That's where it's going to get you there, because you get coaching with the bootcamp. Okay, if you really want to learn this, if you like my teaching style, the way I'm explaining, especially today, right, in short amount of time, I talked so much. If you're able to follow me, that means you kind of can understand me, right, the way I explain, the way I teach my style. If you do, the bootcamp is a really awesome program. Take advantage of it. There is one that starts next week on Tuesday. It starts literally this coming up Tuesday. It's twice a week. Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5 p.m. I call it a 6-month program, but technically it's much longer than that. The live sessions are 3 months. 3 months, we meet twice a week. But after the 3 months, you have to continue to automate and program. The requirement is to see, remember I showed you there are 200 tests. I expect you to write 100 of them on your own, but I review it for you. That's the biggest advantage of a bootcamp, is having a coach, having a mentor, like not only the live sessions, but looking at your work and giving you feedback. That's extremely important. So it does not many people can finish it in 3 months because there's life. People have families, people have jobs, and it's a lot of work. It takes time. So once the 3 months is over, you continue to work on the project, and I continue to support you as long as you need it. That's like the biggest part of this bootcamp. So I say 6 months because I have to put something, right? I have to put some kind of end date to it. So I put 6 months, but it's actually way more than that. 3 months live sessions, and after that, we're building a relationship. It's usually a small group. The last one was 11 people. The one before was about 14 people. So we get to know each other. I get to know your status, your level, and I get to give you, customized feedback. So anybody who's serious about learning automation, this program is awesome. I mean, I know it's mine, so I'm supposed to say that, but I really do believe it. But I put my heart into it. I'm there. I'm supporting you. All the communication happen over Slack, and I'm always online, so I respond to questions right away. It's basically have a coach. So anybody interested, I highly recommend that you check out my bootcamp. I'm going to put the link in the chat, but it's easy, supersqa.com and /bootcamp, or you can just click on the header. It's $2,000, 1997, or 3 payments of $699. It's the cheapest program you will ever find that is live, that has coaching. Like, for the value, this is extremely cheap. The only reason it's cheap is because I'm kind of new. I've been doing it this is going to be my 5th session. I started last year doing the live. I've been creating courses for a while, but doing the live. So, I want to make it affordable for now, but definitely that's not going to be the case going forward. There's money back guarantee. Basically, before next Thursday you join, you watch the first day. If you don't like it, you just hit me up, bam, you get your money back. So it's just an awesome program. That's really what I want to talk about. If you want to do the self-paced, just get a feel for it first. You can do that. If you have any questions, my phone number is right here. I'll send you guys this recording, okay? And also on the same page, on the bootcamp page, you will find my phone number right there. You can book a meeting, one-on-one Zoom meeting with me, and we can talk. Mr. Mohammed, go ahead, man. You can unmute yourself, ask a question. Yeah, anybody post your questions if you don't want to speak. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I just wanted to clarify, like, in the boot camp, will you be providing us the demo sites and the Jenkins for us to work, play around, and deploy our code?
Yes, two things. You will have access to so the Jenkins, I'll give you read access. So you install your own Jenkins, but whenever you want to see how something is done, you can look at it. You can come here and you can view you cannot configure it, because if I give everybody access to configure, they can break it. But yours would say view configuration, so you can see the configuration, so you can copy it to your own Jenkins. I'll show you how to install it and everything. I'll give you guidance. For the demo site, I will give you backend access for the dev side, not this one because everybody uses this one, but this one, I do give you API credentials, so you have full access to backend, because it's a small group of people, right? If you guys break it takes me just a few minutes to recreate it. This whole thing is Dockerized. It's a Docker. So yeah, I'll provide all of that access. Everything you need, I provide. More importantly, I give you guidance to create your own, right?
Okay.
Because you are becoming an engineer, so you should be able to create those, right? You should, as part of the process, learn how to run WordPress. Why not, right? Install your own Jenkins. Why not? So I help you achieve that.
Okay, got you. One last question. Will you also cover GitHub, like checking the code, taking
Yeah.
out demo?
Yeah, we have to. All our code is in Git. All the projects you work on, everything you work on, all the projects, the way I review it is you send me pull requests. So you have to put your code into Git, create a pull request, and send it to me. We do everything exactly the way you would do it in the real world at work. I want you guys to have that realistic experience. Absolutely, we use Git.
Okay, got
And I have a small.
got you. And the class.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Good.
So
Sorry.
I have like a lot of the small topics, right? I don't want to use up our live time. Our live sessions are so precious. I want to be very efficient. So for Git, and instead of doing a Git tutorial during our live session, I created videos. So I tell you, hey, watch this Git video.
Okay.
Then if you have issues, We
Hmm.
talk about it in class because those I want to be as efficient as possible on those live sessions. So I have a lot of resources created
Hmm.
that you can use outside of the live sessions.
Got you, got you. And the classes that you mentioned every week, it's like 8 p.m. EST, right? To us, 8 p.m.
Yeah.
EST. Is that correct?
Yeah, EST, Eastern
Okay.
Time, 8
Okay.
p.m. I'm in the Pacific. I live in Las Vegas.
Okay.
I lived in California Bay Area for a long
Okay.
time. Moved to Las Vegas recently.
Hmm.
So yeah, 5 p.m. my
Okay.
time,
Great.
Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time for 2 hours twice a week.
EST. Okay. Okay. Thanks. Thanks. Just wanted to
No
clarify.
problem. You're
Yeah.
very welcome, and thanks for asking the questions. I love the engagement. There is a question, Tawana. I hear Playwright is a new automation. Do you teach that? I do not. My program does not cover Playwright. I cover Selenium. You don't want to learn both at the same time. It's overwhelming. Even this is overwhelming. It's a lot of material. The good thing is you have unlimited time and you have a coach. Um, and I do recommend to start with Selenium. That's just I'm being biased. You can start with Playwright. There will be more jobs for Selenium than Playwright because Playwright is newer, even though it's awesome. It's newer. But yeah, I do not cover that. Let's hear and enjoyed very much. Bummer that I arrived late tonight. Are you going to provide a slide deck for this call? Slide deck. I did not think about that. I have to think about how to share it, Robin. If you can send me an email, I can send it to you directly. No problem sending the slide. But sharing it, I'm not sure how I can share it. I don't want to post it on my website. I can make it public for like a week or two so you guys can access it. That's probably one way to do. Yeah, I can do that. I can make this public and send the link out for a while, right? Maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But if you email me at admas@supersq.com, then I can send you a PDF of this. No problem. Um, do you run tests on sites that are live? And if so, do you need to warn the host so you don't get dinged as an attacker? Yeah, that's a really good question, Haiti. Hopefully, I'm not messing up your name. Yeah, so when you practice, right, you can use sites that are not yours, like Amazon, right, eBay or Python.org. I used to do that. I never really run into issues, but then you write a test. Let's say I write a test for Amazon.com to show you how to write Selenium. Tomorrow, Amazon.com is going to change, so the test is going to fail, or the locators are different, or the page looks different. So now the code I write is useless. So the first course I created, I was using that. I learned the hard way. All my tests are failing because I don't control that website. It changes all the time. So I'm like, okay, I need to create my own site so it doesn't change all the time. So my students have consistent experience. So I created, it was so easy. I created the website. But yeah, if you are running your test against websites, you could, because they know you're a robot, right? If you're a bot, if you're using Selenium, you can add a lot of stuff to make it look like you're a real person, have a lot of haters and stuff, but they can know. And if you're doing it too much, definitely they will block you. All right. If you're doing like a lot, they'll block you. But not a big deal. And a lot of times they will sense you're a robot and the page will just say, hey, you're using a robot and you should actually, don't do it. Right? They don't like block you, like kill you. They don't do that. They don't cut your access. They just let you know, hey, we know what you're doing. Yeah. Okay, that was a good question. Uh, is this really in demand? I did QA tester class and no job offers. So the job market is terrible right now. The job market is crazy for in tech, not for QA. In general, the job market is tough right now. You're going to compete, that's for sure. But it's cyclic, right? I mean, jobs go like the market is hot and not hot, hot and not hot. Right now, interest rates are so high. Companies are not investing. A lot of layoffs, so a lot of people are looking for a job. So the job market is tough. That means time to learn. You use this time to learn, and by the time you're ready, and the market will be ready. Unless you have other options, like the only way not to do this, the only reason not to do this, not to learn, is I'm going to do this instead. If you have something else you're interested in, then sure, right? You compare and you do what you want. But if you're just going to sit there and not do anything, not invest in your future, not invest in your life, then what are you doing, right? This is a really good option. I definitely recommend it. Again, if you have another option that you want to do that is concrete, of course, do that. But don't just sit there and wait for some magic to happen. take action for sure. And this is just an awesome career. The market is tough right now, but it's not going to be tough forever. Do you record all your bootcamp session, and is it available for us for a later point in time for us to refer? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Most students watch the recording because in class when I'm coding, I do a lot of coding in class, a lot of tutorials. I don't want them to code. I want them to pay attention. But then they still have to go code it. Whatever I coded, they're going to have to code it. They have to practice. So they watch the videos. They watch the recording and practice. And I give them access for a whole year. 1 year after the bootcamp is done, you still have access to the record. You don't need it for that long, but I just made it make it available. Yeah, that was a good question. Definitely, everything is that's one of the most important parts. Let's see. Do you record? Yes. Do we go through artificial intelligence also? How much AI will affect automation testing in the future? I use AI so much, guys. Look at this. This is my chat GPT. Look at my chat. But I use chat GPT day and night. You have to use chat GPT. When you're learning, especially nowadays, this is a luxury you guys have that I didn't have when I was learning. I encourage, I mean, I'm pretty much annoying to my students because I tell them use ChatGPT, use ChatGPT, use ChatGPT. Sometimes they ask me a question, I literally copy the question, post it in ChatGPT, and send them a screenshot. Like you could have got your answer a lot quicker than wait for me to respond. I want to teach them to use ChatGPT more. So it's an amazing tool for us when you're learning something, especially coding. You can ask it to give you examples. You can ask it to explain something to you. You can give it the error you're facing and ask it, hey, this is what I did. This is the error I got. Why am I getting this? You see an example that I do and you don't understand it. You can say, hey, explain this to me. Or you can say, give me another challenge like this. Don't give me the solution yet. Give me a challenge. Then you will work it out and be like, hey, here is my solution. Review it for me. ChatGPT is like having a super smart assistant that you can access. I say ChatGPT, but you can use Gemini or any other AI. I use Gemini and ChatGPT at the same time. So replace us. If it does replace us, it's going to be a long time. You got to understand ChatGPT is software. Software has to be tested, right? Somebody has to manage it. And if you see how many mistakes it makes, I wouldn't be worried about it replacing us anytime soon. I mean, the progress is amazing, right? But I'm really not worried about it replacing us. But you have to be, I think the smart ones are going to know how to use it properly. I think employers are going to be looking for people that know how to use AI efficiently to do their job. Employers just want efficiency, right? So you have to be good at using AI. That's actually one thing I want to do myself personally. I want to learn how LLMs works. I want to learn about prompt engineering more. I do enough research and stuff. I use it a lot, but I want to be better at it because on my resume, I want to present myself as expert at using AI. But how it's being used, again, like I said, figuring out issues, you can literally give it a page and ask it to give you test cases. Okay, I can say, let me try that real quick, just live demo here. I'm gonna pull a new chat and I'm gonna say, give me 10 test cases for this page, right? I got the paid version. I don't know if the free version can access the web, but the paid version can access the web. Look at that. I just gave it the page. I just gave it the URL and it's giving me, it actually went to the page, parsed it, and give me test cases, right? 10 test cases. I can ask it, hey, automate those test cases, right? You don't want to give it a big task. It's not very good when you give it like, if I say automate this, it's not going to do good. But if I say automate test case 1 or automate test case 2 and give it automated with Selenium in Python, like the smaller it is, the instructions you give it and the detailed instructions you give it, the better it does. But look at that. Did it make my life easier just now or no? It did, right? If I wanted to write test cases for this page, I mean, it comes up with test cases I would not have thought about actually, right? I can upload my own framework. See this framework? I can upload that and I can tell it, okay, give me code based on this framework. So I can just put it here. The problem with that is now it knows about my framework, right? You don't want to do that to sensitive information. Everything we do here is going to use it to train itself. So like companies, a lot of companies block it actually because they don't want you to accidentally provide sensitive information to it. But a lot of companies have a reserved instance. Like at my company, we have a reserved instance of GPT. That means whatever we feed it, it's not going to use it to train the models. So we can give it like sensitive information and it won't be available for the rest of the model. It's our own reserved stuff. Okay, that's a really good question. AI is a big picture. You definitely do something like this. Then you put on your resume saying, "Oh yeah, I know how to leverage AI." It's a leverage. It's a big time leverage for us. I love it. Will you provide suggestions for how to secure freelancer work opportunities to gain more experience and generate income since the job market is so competitive? Other than just common sense and based on, I've never been a freelancer. I've been a contractor but from the same company. So just based on my experience, I mean, anything you ask me, I'm going to support you based on what I know. I'm not an expert in freelancing. I'm not an expert in job search. I'm not an expert in resume prep. But we have a relationship. You're my student, right? Anything I know how to do, I'm going to help you. I'm going to use my common sense, my experience, my brain. And it's just like having a friend you ask for help. That's what I'm going to be, right? Since I have a little bit more experience than you, I'm more of a mentor. When it comes to coding, when it comes to Git, when it comes to Python, when it comes to Selenium, API testing, then I can consider myself, um, you know, expert. It's kind of weird to say that about your own self, but I can definitely help you with the technical things. But with the rest of it, I help you just as an experienced person, not as an expert, but as a person that's been around. Yeah, that's how I would help. I hope that's I'm sure that's not a very satisfactory answer, but that's how I would be able to help you. We're building a relationship, right? My students from a year ago, we are talking to each other all the time. The ones that want to engage with me. It's I'm on Slack, I'm on all the time. We're about to start this project, building a resume prep app using Python. So one, we're actually going to use it to collect resume interview questions. I say resume prep interview prep app. Two, we're going to practice writing Python code by building this app, right? And I'm doing that with the student. I'm going to manage it. One of the students is going to lead it, and everybody else, whoever wants to write code, is going to contribute to it. So I'm really looking forward to it. We're in the planning phase right now, and anybody that joins the bootcamp is going to welcome to contribute. It's a really good way to practice Python. So the point is, I have a relationship with my students. It's not like college; you graduate and you're out. It's nothing like that at all. Do you provide mock interviews in your course or after the intern request by student? Yeah, if request by students, right? I've done that before. I've done it actually just once for some reason because of the turnout wasn't good. Yeah, we can set up a call, right? As a group, we say, hey, let's meet next Wednesday for 2 hours or 1 hour, and I'll can set up a Zoom call, and we jump on a call and talk. I'm a busy guy, so I need somebody to like come up with the idea or let's say request it, right? It's not part of my curriculum, but a lot of students would be very happy to do so. And the time we did that, I realized how bad we all sucked at interviewing. So it's really important to do that. So we did that, and we had a list of questions, and a random person would be selected and ask another random person a question, and we were just practicing, and we realized we're not that good at interviewing, which is a good thing. That means when you know what you suck at, you work on it. But yeah, definitely we can do that, right? Thank you guys for engaging and asking questions. I appreciate that. Keep them coming. I'm here. It's well, officially I'm at like I said I'll be here for 90 minutes. It is 90 minutes. I'm gonna stay back, but for those of you who have to drop off, I really appreciate you guys being here. I hope you got what you came here for, right? I hope you came here to learn, and I hope you learned. I hope this wasn't just me advertising my boot camp. I hope you got value out of it. I hope I gave you what you were hoping to get, and I hope I meet your expectations. I really want you to know about QA and just see it. And the bootcamp is not cheap. It's $2,000. It's cheapest. It's the cheapest program out there probably, but it's not little money. It's a lot of money. So I get it. If you don't want to do the bootcamp, you guys can learn. Now you know what you need to learn, so use your resources. Use YouTube, right? Use self-paced courses. You can start out with my self-paced courses. You can go on Udemy and get self-paced courses. You can do YouTube. You can find, especially Python. You should be able to find plenty of free Python courses, except whenever you get free stuff, you don't get support, but that's okay to start with. You know what you need to learn. You know why you need to learn it. So now it's a matter of finding resources, and I am just one of the resources. And you know, hopefully you gained, at least you gained that much from this presentation. I hope I didn't waste your time. I enjoyed it. It was awesome. But I officially want to thank you. And if you need to drop off, I understand. But if you want to stick around and listen to questions, go for it. If there are no questions, of course, I'll end the call. But I am available to take questions. Is there anything else, guys? Feel free to unmute yourselves. Feel free to post in the chat. I think all those questions, some of them are direct, some of them are in the chat. But I've answered everything. If I didn't answer your question, just post it again or remind me, but I think I got everything. Was that good, guys? Can you put 1 if you enjoyed today? Can you put 2 if you think it was a waste of your time? 1 or 2? All right, I see 1. All right, good. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it and you got value out of it. That's really what I want. I do the boot camp. So it's a 3 months boot camp, and usually 3 months, and I take a little break, maybe 2 weeks. The next one I'm take a longer break. So the next one is most likely going to be January. So if you can't make this one, learn Python until the next one, right? Just learn Python, and then you can join me in January. If you learn Python ahead of time, your experience becomes much better, much smoother. I promise you that much. Because Python, knowing the language is the most challenging part. How many hours study? Yeah, I did not mention that. So I always say minimum 3 hours a day, so 21 hours a week, but that's absolute minimum for fast learners. Let me just add that tack on for fast learners, because this stuff is very time consuming. It's not hard. It's not hard at all, especially when you have a support system. It's not hard at all, but it is time consuming. So the difficult part is finding time. So I say 3 hours minimum, the more the better. Just like a sport, literally just like a sport, it's a matter of practice. The more you practice, the better you get. Every day you're going to run into different issues. Every day you're going to run into different error that you haven't seen before. Then you're going to spend time figuring it out, asking questions. And you have to have a personality that asks questions. Don't be the person that is stuck for days because you don't want to ask questions. Either you have too much ego, or you're just nervous, or you're shy. That's just going to hurt you. You gotta ask questions. I'm notorious for asking questions. Notorious, and I learned really quick because of that. So, yeah, I say minimum 3 hours. If you're studying less than 3 hours, it's going to take you a much longer time to achieve your goal. So plan for that. Okay, it doesn't have to be every day, but at least you have to add up to 21 hours a week at a minimum. Again, just remember the analogy with basketball, with the sport. You have to practice. You have to practice. And there are so much to do, so many resources, so many fun projects. It's just an awesome thing, especially for manual testers. Learning automation, you probably already know, but it's a big upgrade. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Alrighty. Any other questions, guys? I am here to take questions. Yeah. So if there are no questions, I will send out the recording. You guys can watch it if you need to. All tools we use are open source. Nothing that you pay for. WordPress is free, Jenkins is free, Python is free. All the IDEs, yeah, literally nothing. I use JIRA in the bootcamp because again, my goal is to give you a full-on experience of being at work. So I use JIRA to manage all our homework and stuff. All the homework is assigned with JIRA. JIRA is not free, but I pay for it. It's like JIRA is free for you. Like even for your personal account, it is. But I want us to be like a company, right? One JIRA board, everybody's ticket is there. We have sprints. We have sprint planning and everything. So when I have more than 10 people in my company, then JIRA is not free no more. So I paid 850 or so per person. So however number of students I have, I add them to my JIRA account and I pay for it. But you get your own. If you want to continue to practice JIRA, you just get, as long as you have less than 10 people, JIRA is free. And JIRA is one of the most popular project management tool out there. We use it for like the homework. Let's say I give you homework saying automate this case ABC. Then I'm going to put the details in a JIRA ticket. Then you're going to create a JIRA ticket, or you're going to clone it or create your own, assign it to yourself, just so you can have that practice. But yeah. Testimonials, I need to ask for testimonials. I can definitely give you contacts of my previous students. You can look at Trust Pilot. I actually literally have one of my students put a review yesterday. Man, I was so happy. I sent her a message thanking her. She was the most recent bootcamp. You can see it. I have all 5 stars. Uh, and you can see the details, how much they love it. Students love the bootcamp, and I'm so proud of that because that whole thing I created, and that's really what I want, right? I want the students to feel like they gained their money's worth and more. But yeah, I don't have any testimonials that I posted. But again, send me an email. I'm happy to talk to you. I'm happy to give you contacts of my previous students. And on Trustpilot, search for Super SQA. You'll see the comments, really detailed comments. And I'm so happy that those students wrote those for me. And I have to keep asking people though, because people do, unless I ask them, nobody's going to leave a review. But that you make a very good point. I need to get testimonials. But don't worry about the quality. The quality of the education, I mean, it's weird to say trust me because I'm a guy on online and there is so much scam online. I mean, it's ridiculous, but yeah, that's all I can say. Trust me, like my business depends on your success, right? Right? The only way my business can grow and be successful is if my students are successful. So I'm 100% invested in making sure you achieve your goals. 100%. Like it's more important to me than it is to you. Maybe not, maybe equal, but it's extremely important. So I'm totally invested in helping you. Yeah, but totally understandable you would ask that. 100%. Anything else? Anything else, guys? So if I miss anything, if you think of a question later on, you'd be like, oh, sure, I should have asked, shoot me an email. You can, so Admas, I should have just left that on. I can put it here, admas@supersqa.com. Oh, why is that private? I want to send it to everyone. How do I do that? Sorry, guys. You guys can, for some reason, the chat is only letting me send it to a specific person. That's weird. That is so weird. I want to send it to everyone, but it's not letting me. Well, you have it on the screen. I was trying to make it easier to copy paste. Yeah, any other questions, guys? Wow, this says Zoom sometimes sucks. Because I'm trying to send a message to everyone and it's not letting me. No, I can chat with you. Okay. All right, guys. Yeah, you can find my contact information on the website, supersqa.com/bootcamp for the bootcamp. And I'll be very happy to answer your question. You guys can book a meeting. If you want to talk to me one-on-one before the bootcamp starts, which is Tuesday, on the bootcamp page, there's a button down there, but there's also this button here. You can just select that, and there's a calendar. You can just select whatever you see is open, and we can sit one-on-one and talk, or on the phone, or just give me a call. I'm in the West Coast, so keep that in mind. Probably 8 a.m. is the earliest in the morning, but that's about it, guys. All right, so I don't want the recording to be too long either. I don't want it to be, just meaningless. So send the questions over. But thank you for joining me today. Appreciate it. And if there are no more questions, have a great night, everybody, or a great day for those of you who are in the UK and in India. Thank you for joining me. And there's a question, I'll email you about it. Thank you so much. Okay, cool. Yeah, send me an email. You got my email. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Good night, everybody. And have a great day. Hopefully I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.